Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today we're taking on something called pyroptosis. Yeah,
Pyroptosis.
pyroptosis, and before you think it's some new workout craze, it's not.
It has to do with how our cells die.
Okay, dramatic cell death. Now I'm really listening, and get this, we're connecting this to periodontitis.
Periodontitis.
You know, that gum disease that a lot of adults deal with.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm following you.
So we dug up this research article from Frontiers in Immunology, and
It really breaks down how pyroptosis is involved,
it even names specific genes that are at play.
which is huge because usually we just see, okay, pyroptosis is present, but this study goes way deeper.
That's why we're here to do a deep dive into it all and uncover just how this fiery cell death is impacting periodontitis.
It's definitely not a peaceful fading away of cells.
More like an explosion.
Exactly. Think of a cell that's under attack.
Okay, got it.
Now, instead of just quietly surrendering, it goes out with a bang, sending out all these signals that trigger a huge inflammatory response.
That's pyroptosis.
That's pyroptosis in a nutshell.
So it's like the cell's last stand, sending out a call for help to the immune system.
You got it. And the thing is, this alarm system is powered by these special proteins called gasdermins.
Gasdermins, interesting.
Yeah, they're like tiny demolition experts inside the cell.
What?
They actually punch holes in the cell membrane, causing it to swell and burst.
Hold on, you're telling me there are proteins inside our cells designed to blow them up?
It is pretty wild, but it's usually a carefully controlled process, and it's triggered by something called an inflammasome.
Okay, back up. What's an inflammasome?
Think of it like a sensor inside the cell.
A sensor for what?
Danger signals. If something's wrong inside the cell, the inflammasome picks up on it.
So if the inflammasome senses trouble, it activates those gasdermin proteins and boom, pyroptosis.
Exactly, and this is where it gets really fascinating.
So lay it on me.
The researchers looked at 26 genes related to pyroptosis.
26, that's a lot.
It is, and they found that these genes actually behave differently in people with periodontitis.
So not all pyroptosis is created equal.
That's right. And out of those 26, there are a few that really stand out.
Okay, like what? Tell me more about the ones that really matter.
Well, two of them, IL-1B and IL-6, are like megaphones for the immune response.
Megaphones, meaning?
When these genes are expressed a lot, it's like they amplify those distress signals from the cell, which leads to more inflammation.
So too much of a good thing, because I thought inflammation was supposed to protect us.
It is, but when it's chronic, like in periodontitis, that intense inflammation can actually start damaging the tissues that support your teeth.
Okay, so uncontrolled inflammation is the problem.
Right. And then there's this gene, GZMB.
That sounds kind of ominous.
It produces an enzyme, and it's known for its role in inflammation and, unfortunately, tissue destruction as well.
Yikes.
It's a pretty powerful player in this whole pyroptosis cascade.
Okay, and then we have NOD2. What's its role?
NOD2 is like the security guard at the front door.
Meaning?
It's involved in recognizing the bacteria that might be causing the problem in the first place.
So it's like the first line of defense.
Exactly. And understanding how NOD2 works could be really key to figuring out how our bodies respond to those periodontal pathogens.
So we've got these key players, some sounding the alarm, some amplifying the signal, and some even causing damage.
Right. It's a whole complex system.
But how did the researchers actually study all of this in periodontitis?
They use these two large data sets, GSE 103344 and GSE 6134. Those names. Think of them like huge libraries of genetic information from lots of people.
Okay, got it.
And they use these libraries to see how these pyroptosis genes behave for people with periodontitis.
And what did they find? Was there a pattern?
They discovered a signature of 14 genes that are really strongly associated with periodontitis.
14 out of the 26.
Exactly. And what's really cool about this is that this signature could potentially be used to diagnose and even predict the course of the disease.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying a simple test could tell you how likely you are to develop serious periodontitis?
That's the idea.
That would be amazing.
And that's not all. They also found that periodontitis isn't just one thing.
Right. Okay, what do you mean?
There seem to be different subtypes, each with their own set of genes that are driving the inflammation.
Different subtypes of periodontitis, huh? This is where it gets interesting. Tell me more about these subtypes.
They identified 3 distinct clusters of patients, and cluster 2, for example, shows this really strong inflammatory response.
Stronger than the others?
Yeah, it's like a raging inferno fueled by genes like CASP3, IL-1B, and you guessed it, GZMB.
Definitely don't want that kind of fire in my mouth. What about the other clusters? Are they fueled by different things?
Exactly. Cluster 3, for instance, involves PLCG1 and PY card.
Those names don't ring a bell.
It suggests that a different set of processes are driving the inflammation in this cluster.
So different clusters, different fuels.
Right, and this is important because it means that a one-size-fits-all approach to treatment might not work for everyone.
I see your point. It's like trying to put out all fires with the same extinguisher.
Exactly, you need the right tool for the job.
So understanding these subtypes could lead to more personalized treatments?
Exactly, you could target the specific genes and pathways involved in each cluster.
That makes a lot of sense. But there's one more thing that I'm curious about.
What's that?
You mentioned something called the pink module.
Ah, yes, the pink module. This is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, you got to tell me more about this pink module.
It's all about stress inside the cell.
Stressed out cells. Now, this is getting complex. Remind me, what part of the cell are we talking about?
The endoplasmic reticulum, or ER.
The ER? Okay, vaguely remember that from biology class.
Think of it as the cell's protein-making factory.
Got it, the protein factory.
Now, sometimes this factory can get overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed how?
It can get overloaded with work, basically leading to something called ER stress.
So if the ER is working too hard, it gets stressed out.
Exactly, and this is where it ties back to pyroptosis.
Okay, I'm listening.
There's growing evidence that ER stress can actually trigger the inflammasome.
You mean that sensor we talked about earlier?
The very same. And when the inflammasome is activated, what happens next?
Pyroptosis, the whole chain reaction of inflammation and cell death.
You got it. And this pink module they found was really strongly linked to that cluster 2 we talked about.
Yeah.
The one with the super intense inflammatory response.
Hold on. So you're saying that stress inside the cell can actually fuel the fire of inflammation and even lead to cell death?
That's what the research suggests, and it opens up a whole new avenue for potential therapies.
So if we could find a way to, calm down the protein factory, maybe we could reduce the inflammation.
Exactly. That's the idea. But we'll dive deeper into all of that in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
All right, so we left off talking about stressed out cells and that whole pink module thing.
Yeah, and the key takeaway there is that by understanding these specific genes and pathways, we're moving towards treatments that are way more targeted.
Okay, so instead of just trying to reduce inflammation in general, we could actually pinpoint the source of the problem and, tackle it head on.
You got to imagine having a toolbox full of specialized tools instead of just one generic wrench. That's the promise of this research.
I like that analogy, makes sense, but I keep thinking back to those different clusters of periodontitis patients. Does that mean that what works for one person might not work for another?
Yeah, that's a really important point. And that's why this study is so groundbreaking. It highlights the need for personalized approaches to treatment.
Right, because just like you wouldn't treat all headaches with the same medication, you wouldn't treat all periodontitis the same way.
Exactly.
So you're saying in the future, dentists might actually use this 14-gene signature to figure out which cluster a patient falls into and then personalize their treatment plan.
That's the hope. It's all about moving towards a future where treatments are tailored to the individual, not just the disease.
That would be incredible. But we can't forget that periodontitis isn't just about your gums, right? It's linked to some serious health issues.
You're absolutely right. Chronic inflammation anywhere in the body can have consequences. And we're learning more and more that periodontitis is a big contributor to that.
So by getting a handle on the inflammation in your mouth, you might actually be reducing your risk for other conditions like heart disease or diabetes.
Exactly. Taking care of your oral health isn't just about a pretty smile. It's a crucial part of your overall well-being. And there's another really interesting aspect of this research I want to touch on.
Okay, I'm all ears. What else did they uncover?
Remember that pink module and the whole ER stress thing we discussed?
Yeah, the stressed out protein factory?
Right. Well, it turns out there's a fascinating link between that and something called the unfolded protein response, or UPR.
The unfolded protein response, it sounds kind of sci-fi. Remind me, what exactly is that again?
Well, think back to the ER. The protein factory. And sometimes proteins don't fold properly as they're being made. It's like trying to fold a piece of origami the wrong way. It just doesn't work.
So you end up with a mess of misfolded proteins? What happens then?
The cell actually senses this problem and activates the unfolded protein response. It's like the cell saying, hold on, we need to fix these misfolded proteins before they cause more trouble.
Ah, so the UPR is like a quality control system for the protein factory.
Exactly. It tries to restore order and get things back on track.
But what happens if the stress is too much?
Well, if the stress is too intense or if it goes on for too long, the UPR can actually trigger cell death.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? Because you said there's a link between the UPR and pyroptosis.
Exactly. The researchers found that the UPR and pyroptosis are actually interconnected. They might be influencing each other in periodontitis.
So it's like a cellular conversation gone wrong.
Yeah, and this leads to a vicious cycle of inflammation and damage.
Oh, I see. So ER stress triggers the UPR, which then activates pyroptosis, which leads to even more inflammation. It's like a domino effect.
That's a great way to think about it, and understanding this connection opens up a whole new avenue for therapies.
So if we could find a way to modulate the UPR, like calm it down a bit,
We might be able to interrupt that vicious cycle and reduce the inflammation.
that could be huge. And this could have implications beyond just periodontitis, right?
Absolutely. The UPR is involved in so many conditions, from cancer and Alzheimer's to diabetes and even heart disease.
Wow, this deep dive into pyroptosis is really giving us insights into a much bigger picture. It's kind of blowing my mind.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is in our bodies, and this research is just the tip of the iceberg.
So what's next? What are the researchers planning to do with this knowledge?
Well, now that they've identified this link between pyroptosis, the UPR, and periodontitis, the next step is to explore how we can actually use this information to develop new treatments.
So lots more research, but it sounds like this could be a game changer, not just for periodontitis, but maybe even for these other diseases too.
That's the hope. It's an exciting time to be working in this field, and this research is definitely opening up some amazing possibilities.
Well, I, for one, am super curious to see what they discover next, but I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what does this all mean for me?
That's the big question, right? And it's one we'll definitely tackle head on in our final segment, so stay with us. We've got a lot more to uncover.
Okay, so we've gone deep into this world of pyroptosis, seen how it plays out in periodontitis, and even touched on its connection to stress inside our cells. But now, I think the big question is, what does this all mean for you and me out there listening?
Right. What's the takeaway for everyday life? And I think this research gives us some really interesting clues to think about.
So it's not just about, understanding a single disease, but maybe unlocking secrets that could impact our health as a whole.
Exactly. And if pyroptosis is such a key player in periodontitis, then it probably plays a role in other inflammatory conditions too, right?
Yeah, and we're talking about some serious stuff here, like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, even certain cancers. They all have that inflammation component.
The implications are huge. I mean, if we could learn to control this pyroptosis process, could we potentially prevent or even treat some of these conditions? This research is really giving us the tools to start exploring those questions.
It's like we found this hidden control panel for inflammation in the body.
I like that control panel, but we're still figuring out all the buttons and switches.
Right, and remember all those specific genes and pathways we talked about.
Yeah.
That knowledge could be applied to other diseases too, right? Especially where inflammation is a key driver.
Exactly. It's like having a roadmap to a whole new world of treatment possibilities. But I think it's important to remember there's still a long road ahead.
Of course, more research is always needed, and then there's the whole connection between pyroptosis and the unfolded protein response that opens up even more areas to explore.
Imagine if we could develop drugs that could target the UPR, and prevent it from triggering that inflammatory cascade.
That would be a game changer.
It could be revolutionary for so many conditions.
So this deep dive into pyroptosis has really given us a glimpse into this bigger picture, right? This complex web of cellular interactions that are impacting our health in ways we probably don't even realize.
This is amazing, isn't it? And it just shows the power of scientific inquiry.
Yeah.
By really delving into these tiny workings of our cells, we're getting insights that could change how we think about health and disease completely.
It's pretty humbling and super exciting. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Oh, I love a good thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
What do you have in mind?
Well, we talked a lot about how pyroptosis can be triggered by, danger signals inside the cell.
Right?
But what about signals from outside the cell? Could things like our environment, our lifestyle choices, even our stress levels be influencing this whole process?
That's such a great question. And honestly, it's something that researchers are looking into right now. There's some evidence suggesting that factors like what we eat, how much we exercise, how well we sleep, even exposure to toxins could actually be impacting cellular processes like pyroptosis.
So taking care of ourselves might be even more important than we think. It's not just about preventing disease. It's about creating an environment inside our bodies where our cells can thrive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This research empowers us to be proactive. By understanding these complex processes, we can make better choices that support our overall well-being.
So that's it for our deep dive into the world of pyroptosis. We explored its role in periodontitis and even got a glimpse of its potential impact on so many other diseases. But the exploration doesn't stop here.
Keep those questions coming. Keep learning and stay curious because the world of science is always changing and there's always something new to discover.
And that's what we love about the deep dive. We're all on this journey together. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep diving deep.